Which, look at that, a suit. Last time I admit that I thought that Mono was actually one of the better pink leads ever, and while I don't have the exact same kind of feelings for Agri as a 6 Ranger, I do think she gets a tad bit too much clout.
Yes, she didn't leave a good first impression. By curb stomping Regina, she both upstaged the original 4 who just lost to her, and defeated a fan favorite for many. Her taking Ma's transformation trinket was just the cherry on top of the negative reaction she had already built up.
However, while I could understand such souring people to her character, Agri to me is a lot like Akko from Sweet, one of my personal favorite 6 Rangers.
She was meant to be a little unlikable at first, but as time went by and she dropped some of her defenses, we got to see and truly appreciate her growth. Now, while I do think Akko overall pulled this off better, Agri is certainly no slouch.
With that in mind, let's take a look at the 3rd quarter of this series, where we get to learn a little bit more about our cute little trump card.
We opened episode 26 with the Precure's class proclaiming their future career goals. You think it's possible that Mana's the PM in Star Twinkle? Would kind of explain why the Mr. Kaguya subplot was sidelined so suddenly. However, in spite of stunning for it, Rika was a little unsure on whether or not she wanted to follow in her mother's footsteps and become a doctor. And yeah, I'm starting to think this is just a thing when it comes to the blues. Heck, even Aguri kind of agreed with me and pointed out how she needed to start finding some resolve in her decisions.
And this conveniently leads into one of the more divisive elements of Agri's character, the fact that she becomes the mentor to the original 4.
Now personally, I don't think there's anything wrong with 6 Ranger becoming somewhat of a mentor to the team. It worked out great for Hikaru-sensei from Maji Ranger. But when it's coming out of the mouth of a clearly much younger character, then you kind of get the Wesley Crusher effect, with them coming off as a bit of a brat.
However, while this was certainly the case for Wesley, as the plot practically had to bend over backwards to make him right in the end.
But shut up, Wesley!
Aguri is addressing character flaws that were there before she even debuted.
Mana's obsessive compulsiveness with trying to satisfy everyone's needs, Makoto's inability to let go of her past feelings, Alice's stubbornness in trying to handle everything on her own, and now Rika's lack of resolve in her decision making. While her delivery could be better, Aguri's not overstepping her bounds and is just trying to improve this team.
Plus, as the series goes on, we will see more and more justification for why she acts beyond her years.
Meanwhile, at the interdimensional bowling alley, Ira was getting some playful hazing from Leva and Gula.
Strike!
Understandably ticked off, he tried to vent some of his frustrations to the clouds.
Never knew that Zeus was a part of the Precure canon, and yet he still hasn't appeared in FGO yet.
He would later be found by Rika at the beach, and in spite of her fairy partner's warnings, she decided to help him. And when he woke up...
Round the pants who saw that coming, yeah, that's what I thought.
Thus, we got the beginnings of a ship that I'm pretty sure led to this very same reaction from many. Heck, while we're at it, why don't we throw in some yaoi fangirl bait?
Yeah, I remind you, in spite of this fairy having a name based on the Queen of Diamonds, he's actually a boy. More on those names in a little bit, by the way.
However, it didn't take long before the other fairies discovered Ira with probably one of my favorite reaction faces from the show. As a result, Rika had to spill the beans to her teammates, which also happened to catch the ears of Aguri. She gave Rika an ultimatum: let her eliminate Ira or oppose her.
A protagonist morally debating with another in a sudden shower. Yep, definitely a Yonemura script.
The rest of her team backed her up, but before they could proceed any further, the evil Snorlax appeared. To measure Rika's resolve, Aguri let them face Gula alone, and as they fought him, Ira's memories slowly start to come back to him.
Hey Vegeta! Krillin is trying to steal your act!
Of course, Rika was just happy to see him back to normal, and Ira returned the favor. With that, Aguri was able to congratulate Rika on finding her resolve and they defeated Gula in probably one of the most non-lethal yet still most painful ways possible.
And yet, if this were another anime, that would have very different connotations.
This was probably my favorite episode of this mini-arc, as not only was it hilarious and kind of adorable,
but it was also nice to see a Blue Cure find their own resolve through their own morals and stick with their initial choices.
Also, the fact that Rika reminds me a lot of Kagami in this episode helps too. God, why wasn't he the main character? However, we still had one more episode of this Cure's mini-arc, this time featuring the character herself. The episode opened with a Jikochu fight that reminded me why I hate the fact that I live in a state where bike lanes exist. Still, in spite of being one of the weaker types, Aguri chose not to stick around for some reason. Later, the team went to the residence of Ma's mother's Chado teacher, Mai Madoka.
Did that joke in the last part.
Yeah, unsurprisingly, this was also Aguri's home as Mai was her grandmother. She convinced them to keep her superheroine identity a secret in exchange for inviting them to an outdoor ceremony the next day. Meanwhile, Leva and Gula plotted their next move. They decided to try a team attack this time.
Anyone else getting the feeling that this show is getting a tad bit too pandering?
The next day, the Precure got to experience the full-on traditional tea ceremony, which, yeah, someone who trained at a Zen temple, it is in fact this overly complicated. Still, thanks to it, the Cures managed to see some different sides to their 6th Ranger. She also clarified her goals that I mentioned at the top of this video, as well as some vague backstory.
Yeah, I gotta save some of those twists for the 3rd act, am I right?
Besides, there was a monster of the week that needed to be taken care of. Leva and Gula made good on their plan and created a larger Jikochu by performing their version of the Love Love Tenkyoken.
Somewhere, a young man growing in his swirly goatee found his purpose in life.
The combo Jikochu lived up to the gloats of its creators, even breaking through Aguri's ace shot. To make matters worse, a hungry Gula smelled Mari's tea snacks and began making his way towards her along with his monster. Aguri tried to protect her, but was taken out by a rival series mechanic.
Well, at least it's not one of Toei's more cruel jabs at the competition.
But yeah, like many Ultramen, Makai Knights, and even our 6th Ranger, Aguri could only maintain her transformation for a very limited amount of time per day. However, thanks to her training, the original 4 managed to unleash their Ultra instincts at will and defeated all the villains in successive fashion. Thus, the episode ended with the team finally starting to get along with their 6th Ranger, as they can now say they've all learned and grown stronger together. 28 opened with the Cure's training.
Try and tell that to Saitama.
Then again, last I checked, his training regimen wasn't this strict. The Precure all agreed they were overdoing it, and Aguri's stamina eventually sided with them as she passed out. They moved her to a bench with some help from a girl from Aguri's class, Eru, who had been watching them the whole time.
Okay, if this show's stalker count gets any higher, we're gonna have to start moving things to Hinamizawa.
Yeah, anyway, the Cures quickly bonded with Lil Miss Stalker by exchanging stories about Aguri. It seemed like their 6th Ranger didn't have much in the way of friends, as much like Makoto before her, she was too focused on ending the tyranny of King Selfishness sooner rather than later. Thus, to help clear her head a little, they talked Aguri into going to a festival that night with Eru. Of course, this led into the usual tropes found in these sorts of episodes for most anime, really. Though at least one of their plushy friends didn't end up becoming a prize this time. Cute stuff mixed in with stuff that reminds us all why carnivals kind of suck.
Yeah, might want to avoid using that excuse if Liam Neeson ever stops by your booth.
Unfortunately, we didn't get a Sam Raimi crossover, and instead more of these guys. Aguri tried to get Eru to safety while the rest of them dealt with the Jikochu. This didn't work out so well as Aguri had become the target of the villains who in the last episode had seen her weakness. They almost got her while she was trying to protect Eru, but her classmate immediately repaid the favor as well as something from even earlier. Yeah, as it turns out, the reason Eru became her friend, was because she once saved her from some bullies who were making fun of her hair. It's a pretty touchy moment that shows that while her main goals were to save Trump Kingdom, by simply applying the philosophy of the Precure into her everyday life, Agri was already becoming a very amiable person.
Personally, I just really like subtle messages like this, especially when you remember who this show's target audience is.
Anyway, after convincing Eru to look away for a second, Agri was able to join the fight. Of course, the villains tried to pull a Silver Ranger and use stall tactics to wait out her transformation time. However, with her new friends and stalker classmate backing her, Agri managed to beat the clock. Even though going by how fast time has passed in previous episodes, I'm pretty sure this monologue should have eaten up her 5 minutes. But hey, let's not sweat the semantics and just let our characters enjoy the fireworks. Thus, we reach one of my personal favorite, less plot-relevant episodes of this season. We opened with President Mana hard at work.
Final Fusion.
Noticing how busy her partner was, Charles tried to do her part and help out, but couldn't do anything with her plushy body.
Also, this is a good time as any to bring up these fairies' names. I'm going to stick with calling them Charles, Rochelle, Lance, and Davy, as these are all references to playing cards and the people they represent.
Charles, the King of Hearts, Rochelle, the Queen of Diamonds, Lancelot, the Jack of Clubs, and David, the King of Spades. And for anyone saying I should call this character Sharu, let me point out that's just how the Japanese pronounce Charles. Anyway, I bring this up because the fairies are going to be the focus of this episode as they try to learn how to take on human forms like Davy. And in spite of her warnings, I have to agree with Charles that it's a pretty damn nifty technique, considering how many fairies have become business owners or even joined the ranks of their superheroine friends.
Though I will admit, I'm sort of concerned of what sort of human form Fua is going to take on.
While their first attempt doesn't go well, the trio does eventually take on some cute human forms.
I can't be the only one who thought about Iris from Sakura Wars, right?
They immediately showed off their new forms to their partners, leading to even more ships.
Yes, even the bunny plushie couldn't escape from Mana's harem tractor beam.
I kid though, one of the reasons this is one of my personal favorites is because I think it's absolutely adorable to see each of the fairies doing everything they can to support their partners. This continued into the next day with Charles sneaking into the Precure school and helping out with the student council's activities. And in a nice version of a tired trope, she was reasonably competent.
Seriously, it's more frustrating than anything else when a sidekick can't perform basic tasks. It kind of makes you wonder how they even survived before meeting their protagonist.
The fact that Charles has been closely observing Mana since episode 1 gives additional justification for her competency. However, she might have taken a bit too much influence from her partner as she tried to help everyone she could, while also trying to deliver some documents to a neighboring school. And while she was gone, Leva and Gula launched an attack, leaving Mana unable to transform. And to make matters worse, Charles ended up going over a 1-hour time limit that Davy had given her, which didn't have any noticeable effect on her. I think she was unable to sense the Jikochu because of it, but they didn't really do a good job of tying it back to the time limit.
Yeah, I just said this was one of my personal favorites. That doesn't mean I necessarily think it's the best written.
This wasn't helped by the fact that the Monster of the Week fight was a little contrived. While Leva and Gula creating a literal two-faced monster that requires simultaneous attacks to defeat it is clever, the reason the Precure can't defeat it at first is at least a little eye-rolling.
Why don't you guys just go with a trio variant of that attack?
I mean, I realize the combo Jikochu is stronger than the average monster, but you can't convince me that these three together can't equal an ace shot.
It makes them look weak without their fearless leader, and just adds to the Mana's of Mary Sue credence.
Anyway, Mana finds Charles, who apologized for messing up, but Mana assured her that she did the right thing, and that from now on, they could work together to hammer out each other's shortcomings. Again, in spite of the noticeable flaws in this episode's writing, I still really like it as we get to see the good influence the Precure have had on their fairy partners. After defeating the Jikochu, a couple of people Charles helped stopped by to thank her. Really touchy stuff that even impressed Agri enough that she decided that they could start the next phase of their training. Thus, appropriately enough, the 30th episode of the series became one of the most plot significant. The Precure were searching for a new product placement. I mean, the first of 3 legendary artifacts. Yeah, that's it.
Okay, jokes aside, I actually do like it when this franchise brings up concepts like the ancient Precure and expands the lore in ways that gives credit to that whole legendary warriors thing.
And while a couple of these artifacts are just being introduced with no real build-up, one of them was previously seen and would become much more significant later, but more on that next time. For now, the Precure had set their sights on the crystal mirror, which Agri had learned about from an elderly fairy right before she became Cure Ace. However, along the way, they ran into a creature from a different anime.
Seriously, that thing wouldn't look out of place in Yu-Gi-Oh!, which, as of late, has been kind of lacking in good dragon designs.
The dragon forced them to make an emergency landing near a remote island. On the island, they met the aforementioned elderly fairy, Malin, the guardian of the crystal mirror. They tried asking for it from her, and she agreed to give it to them if they could defeat her. Well, she does seem to have a small hitbox, but I'm sure this shouldn't be too much of a challenge.
Oh crap.
The Precure did put up a good, really well animated fight, probably one of the best of the series, but there was a clear level gap, with Malin totally tanking their finishers thanks to a very strong barrier. She absolutely curb stomped them and topped their defeat with the Nabishin treatment.
What? You hate the afro? See, Pedro hates.
Agri took their defeat the hardest, as the whole reason for her little training guard was to get everyone ready for this specific fight.
ダメだった。そのステージは思った以上に遠かった。
Again, while I can understand people's frustrations with this character, it's moments like these that do kind of justify her rough beginnings.
It paints her as a kid who grew up a little too fast and tried to overcompensate for her lack of maturity that wasn't just going to magically appear out of nowhere like her transformation. Thus, when she had to face the reality of her situation, it hit her like, well, a giant dragon. Still, Mana remained positive and they camped out on the island. Malin at first tried to get them to leave, but after seeing their resolve, in particular Ma's desire to save Regina, she granted them a second round. Now aware of her barrier, they managed to counter it by breaking it with another barrier?
Brilliant! Brilliant!
Yeah, don't ask me how that works. I'm guessing Alice is just a Naofumi fangirl. Still, even with the barrier down, the Precure couldn't land a finishing blow as Agri's time limit was up and they couldn't use their arrows as they had used up all of their MP for that barrier break.
私たちは絶対に諦めない。
Eventually, they did manage to knock Malin into a corner and Mana delivered kind of a blow, I think? Well, it was enough to impress both Malin and the spirit of her late partner, Cure Empress. Thus, she gave them the crystal mirror, having seen a little bit of Cure Empress in Mana.
私絶対に諦めない。
Hey, Yuki Chien really did become a Precure eventually.
The episode ended with Sebastian calling in a helicopter to take them home, and Mana naturally asking if the dragon could join them.
それは無理だ。新しい時代は。
Yeah, I bet you just don't want to miss out on your soaps.
31 opened with Belle clearly badgering Leva and Gula into launching an attack. While that was going on, the Precure tried to figure out how to replace the batteries in their new tablet without taking it to the Apple Store.
摂氏1000度の耐火実験や深海での耐久実験もやってみます。
You know, Alice might be a bit of an imbalanced tank on her team, but as Cure money, she is just the greatest.
Ultimately, they couldn't figure anything out, and to make matters worse, a happy little lunch they were going to have with their families was interrupted by a sudden outbreak of narcolepsy that was spreading throughout the city and beyond. Leva and Gula had implanted everyone with selfish seeds that would eventually bloom into full-on Jikochu. Not only would this lead to worldwide chaos and destruction, but it would also lead to the full resurrection of King Selfishness.
Everybody got that?
Still, villains being villains, Leva and Gula gave the Precure a chance to stop them and invited them to fight them in their final monstrous form.
Yeah, do I even have to play that clip? Oh well.
悪者どもの超鉄板敗北フラグだ!
Granted, it wasn't an easy fight as they managed to counter all of their attacks, and even though they tried to save up Agri's 5 minutes, it was all for naught. And since we're all of a sudden going into mid-season finale mode, why not throw in another wrench into the conflict?
This is why you have to sometimes pay a little extra for those protection plans.
With their last MacGuffin broken, things look hopeless for our heroines.
お前たちの世界が滅んでいく様をゆっくり見物してろ。
Okay, are you guys just reading out of a handbook of villain cliches? You're practically asking to be defeated at this point.
And just to keep the cliche train a-rolling, we get our main heroine having a rather sudden heroic blue screen of death moment.
大切な町がこんなことになって胸がこんなに痛むんだね。
Okay, this isn't a jab against Mana specifically, as Hitomi Nabatami's performance here is great. I just have to ask one question. Where the hell is this coming from?
Yeah, as I was hinting at a minute ago, this whole episode feels incredibly rushed, like it was originally meant to be a two-part mid-season climax.
And oi toy, I wouldn't be surprised if that were originally the case.
I already went over how the execs meddled with Makoto joining the team sooner than originally intended because they wanted her to be a part of the spring movie, so who's to say they didn't drop an entire episode just to get their new toy out a week earlier? Really, how this should have gone was have an episode where the Precure tried to unlock the mirror's powers, maybe have a one-off adventure where Mana starts to doubt her abilities a little, and then end the episode with literally the seeds of Leaf and Gula's endgame being planted.
Without it, it just feels like everything is coming out of left, right, and center field.
Granted, I do think this is a legit awesome moment.
すっきりした。
Even though it does kind of paint our main heroine as being a bit bipolar. Anyway, our heroines face down the guys who raised all of the defeat flags, and hey, now that I think about it, didn't they just so happen to break the mirror into 5 pieces and there are 5 members of this Precure team?
How toyetic can you get?
The new tablets gave Agri a few extra transformation minutes, and with it, the team pulled off their first full roll call, and okay, Rika, you're showing off a tad bit too much leg there, girl. And just to add on to that meme pile, their new finisher gives Makoto this face. That is not the face of a magical girl who fights for good. But yeah, they defeated them with a new finisher that honestly is kind of lame. It's just them swiping on their iPad minis to win the day.
As such, I do feel obligated to at least try and make the scene a little more awesome.
Stay back, Jack Green King is. Royal Straight Flash.
With that, they defeated Gula and Leva and saved the city. However, after the villains got back to their HQ, President Charisma finally revealed his hands, stealing the very life force from his comrades in a bloodless yet still very brutal scene.
あとは俺に任せろ。
だが私は謝らない。
Thus, we entered into an arc that, in their infinite wisdom, Saban decided to skip entirely for Glare Force.
Yeah, I know I said I wasn't going to bring it up, but I just have to get this off my chest.
Anyway, this Blood Ring arc, as we'll call it, featured Bell creating the titular new items for his associates out of the power he stole from Gula and Leva. They would allow them to give massive buffs to their Jikochu, while also acting as a little insurance for Bell himself.
さと俺の前にひざまずき、忠誠を誓え。
Enjoy the limelight while it lasts, dude, because once we reach the end of this arc, oh boy.
The first episode of this arc is probably one of the best of this series.
Yeah, while the Fairies turning into humans episodes was one of my personal favorites, I do think this is one of the best of the series because it highlights its themes a lot better than other episodes.
We open with the Precure school having finished setting up for their cultural festival the next day. Mana, of course, was in high spirits. For all of 40 seconds. Yep, after 32 episodes, Mana's stamina finally caught up with her and she developed a fever from overexertion. And yet, she still wanted to get up and participate in her school's festivities.
休みなさい。
I see someone is exercising her position as main waifu.
This little stunt again reminded Rika of the Happy Prince story, which Agri wasn't familiar with. So later that night, she read up on it and learned about the tragic fate of the titular character. And as a result, when she saw Mana trying to help out at the festival the next day, she wanted to do everything she could to prevent her from ending up like the prince.
So yeah, I think this is a great episode as it highlights a main theme of the series, finding the balance between selfishness and selflessness.
This is a theme commonly found in toy superhero shows, most notably Kamen Rider O's, which I brought up in the first part of these reviews.
And in hindsight, I missed out on a great opportunity to point out the fact that Yasuko Kobayashi was the head writer of O's, and that Ryoto Yamaguchi more than likely took some elements almost directly from that series and put it into this show.
I already brought up the villain similarities to the degree, so let's move on to the leads, Eiji Hino and Mana Aida. Both are a couple of the best of their respective franchises thanks to their selflessness, though that doesn't come without a price. As without any sort of selfish desires, there was little to stop these two from perpetually helping others aside from the limitations of their own bodies, which they did end up taxing on more than one occasion. By the end, both needed to learn the importance of not bearing the weight of the whole world on their respective shoulders alone, through the help of a couple of fiery redheads. With that, Agri took over from Mana and began applying some more Spartan management.
どうしたの？通りすがりの小学生に。
怒られまして。
Could have been worse. You could have been lectured by Shinzo Abe about the importance of the birds and the bees.
But yeah, if you recollect part 2 of these reviews, Agri pretty much paraphrased the Iskander speech I used to poke holes into Mana's philosophy. And sure enough, Mana couldn't disagree with her and even acknowledged that she can't do everything, but simply wanted to do what she could. In the end, neither side could totally fault the other, as there is always going to be a lot of gray area when it comes to these sorts of things. This was best illustrated after a myriad of accidents and mismanagement. The student council managed to reorganize and put together a successful festival by using both Mana's words as inspiration and Agri's more practical sense.
In the end, it took two opposing philosophies coming together to save the day, and sure enough, this will be brought up again at the very end of the series.
Anyway, we then got a Monster of the Week fight that, after all of that, kinda felt a little superfluous, but was kind of justified thanks to this great bit of continuity.
いいよ。あなた、もういい加減こんなバカなことやめたら？
The powered up Jikochu was formidable, but this was also an arc where they decided to show off some of the extra functions of the lovely patch, which of course included new attacks. For Agri, it was pretty much a variant on the Solar Flare! They defeated it, the festival proceeded smoothly. Guess these students have become really jaded to these monster attacks. And the episode ended with the most questionable addition to the Mana harem. 33 opened with the Precure having a slumber party at Alice's.
お泊まり会といえば告白タイムだもんね。
Hitomi Namatame isn't even acting in this scene, is she?
However, before we could get any ship confirmations, Alice's father had returned home. Said father was, Jake the Snake Roberts?
ところでお父様、今日は突然の帰国でしたけど。
Let me guess, Hogan turned down another title shot with you. Seriously, this man made the DDT a staple. He deserved at least one championship run.
This little encounter with her father made Alice reminisce the first time she met her friends, and thus the majority of the episode was just a flashback. It capped off with a little adventure in which the young Precure helped their new friend avoid moving away by taking advantage of the Yotsuba Mansion's many bizarre-ass traps. Seriously, a lot of this just feels like something right out of a cheap 90s movie.
Come on, Jake. Just because Hogan did a lot of them doesn't mean you have to follow suit.
But yeah, obviously Alice didn't move away because they were able to make her dad realize that her friends made her stronger and healthier than any sort of foreign medicine or treatment ever could. It was a cute and fun little story, but also a tad bit too silly to take seriously. The episode itself concluded with another rather tacked on fight with Mamon, though Alice finding some new usage of her shields was pretty awesome. Much more impressive than how her lovely pad attack would turn out.
ロゼッタバルーンは何が出るのか、毎回のお楽しみですわ。考察ありがとう。
Jumping right into episode 34, the Precure quickly dispatched Oscar the Grouch. However, just as they were about to call it a day, I let out a cry so powerful that it not only severely degraded the animation quality, but also powered up the villains. Alright, it wasn't exactly a power-up as we would learn in the very next episode, but it still does make for an interesting mechanic.
After all, most of these toddlers have just been used as obscenely OP Deus Ex Machinas. What made characters like Shifon interesting was the fact that her powers could also be used by the villains. Kind of like I here. It's just too bad this is only going to be relevant for the next few episodes. Yeah.
Anyway, obviously the episode focused around childcare, mostly on Rika's part, with some honestly touching reminiscing from her mother, who was a pediatrician.
No, I've drawn from that well enough.
But yeah, I really don't have much to say about this one. It's just a nice wholesome episode that, in spite of the noticeable drop in animation quality, I do recommend checking out if you just want to get warmed up a little. Only other things worth noting include Rika using her lovely pad to spin the Jikochu right round, baby, right round, and Princess Ange finally making another appearance after her last one where she provides some rather needless exposition, And true to form, 35 opened with her explaining even more stuff we could have figured out on our own. Though she did at least clarify that I wasn't actually boosting the villains, but rather letting up her own debuffs on them. Yeah, believe it or not, these guys would have been some of the stronger Precure villains if I wasn't around. However, since she was basically entering into her terrible twos phase, she was synchronizing with the villains and giving them back their powers. Thus, the Precure had to raise the toddler into a proper, well-behaved kid to keep the villains at bay.
I'm guessing the baby Sinclair trick won't work.
And for their next bit of childcare, they had to teach the importance of brushing your teeth to both Ai, who was growing in her first set, and Makoto, who had developed a cavity. I'm guessing the fantasy kingdom she came from didn't provide good dental plans, in that they probably didn't even have dentists, judging by Makoto's reactions in this episode.
You know, based on that and some revelations later in the series, I'm starting to think that Trump Kingdom isn't all that worth saving.
But yeah, obviously this episode, plus another one coming up, are meant more for the show's target audience, and is teaching them some very basic kind of kiddie lessons, but I will admit I like the delivery in this show.
虫歯の本当に恐ろしいところはこれからよ。どうしても治せない時や親知らずの歯は抜くこともあるんだよ。
You girls are actually kind of enjoying this, aren't ya?
Also, I'll admit, I do really like the monster of the week.
ほら、あの音を聞くと怖くて足がすくむのよ。
To somewhat make up for her butt monkey status, Makoto at least got probably the coolest lovely pad attack in my opinion. 36 saw the return of the fairy's human forms. Unable to help her partner, like Charles, Rochelle instead tried to find the lost rabbit of one of Rika and Mana's classmates, Yashima. He found it, and she thanked the little blue pooch, calling him her hero. That night, he couldn't stop thinking about her.
大変ケロ、早く寝て治すケロ。
Rika, did you remember to get your dog fixed?
Yup, sure enough, Rochelle was in love, and we got probably one of the more unusual episodes of this series.
Though just so that we're clear, I'm not referring to the fact that Rochelle is a dog fairy in love with a human girl. That's really not my place to judge. What I will judge are the creepy faces this little brat makes. Like, seriously, what is this, and how did it get past the censors?
Seriously, between this and the fact that the monster of the week was basically made from a yandere, I don't know how else to describe this episode other than it's probably one of the most satirical episodes of the entire franchise.
And I really can't find fault with that, as I do find it entertaining as a cynic myself.
Anyway, they let Rochelle indulge in his literal puppy love, and as I said, they had a monster of the week fight that I'd argue is probably one of the best of this series. Oh, I don't mean from a technical sense or even this bit of Alice/Makoto shipping, but for probably one of the greatest Precure attacks ever, as Rochelle tried to take the initiative in defending Gashima's honor, while ruining his partner's image forever.
You know, some God tier episodes take a lot of work from the entire staff. They work hard to tell these deep emotional tales about these young ladies struggling to better themselves and the world around them. This one has a horny dog forcing his partner to perform a butt attack. Yep, I'd say they're on the same level.
Anyway, Makoto added to her butt monkey status, the Cure's fried Donald, and the episode ended with Yashima revealing that she already had a boyfriend.
When you're old enough, kid, I'll buy you a drink.
37 was the other more key lesson episode I hinted at, but again, even as a grown man, I do enjoy this one. This time, the focus was getting both Ai and Aguri to eat their vegetables, specifically their carrots. It's actually a nice bit of characterization for Aguri, showing that in spite of her trying to act beyond her years, she still had some of the bad habits many of us had as kids, and sometimes even have as adults. However, at least in Aguri's case, she did realize it was a bad habit that was having a negative influence on Ai, so she made an effort to better herself for the toddler's sake. Thus, Rika tried to teach her the health benefits of carrots, which then led into arguably one of the most memeable scenes in this entire series, and that's saying something, Mana in the carrot suit.
よし、警察。わかった。
Well, even if she still hates carrots, at least she now knows the importance of stranger danger, so good job there, Mana.
Realizing that they might need to take some less extreme measures, they decided to take Aguri straight to the source at a farm that supplied the carrots at Mana's family's restaurant. The owner of said farm was a guy from a different toy property.
I'm guessing he was just getting ready for the show's inevitable cancellation. My condolences, dude.
To cure of her phobia, Saint Carrot had Agri and her team help cultivate the veggies, which of course include fertilizing them and
手つかみで君たちのぬくもりを人参に伝えるんだ
Yeah, how about no, dude? My friend has worked on his relatives' farms and he's told me horror stories about this stuff.
That aside, Agri did start to gain an appreciation for Carriage just in time for a Monster of the Week fight with a prototype Kira baddie, I think.
Quick, somebody buy all of the cream from the local supermarket!
The Precure and Saint Carrot engaged the Kira monster.
Yeah, this is why your show was getting cancelled.
The monster ended up capturing Ai and Agri and showed them images of carrots that, quite frankly, were nowhere near as scary as the one from earlier in the episode. Still, since she wasn't there to experience the true fear, this was enough to set off Ai's negative emotions, powering up the monster. Thus, it fell upon Agri to be a good example for the younger one in an admittedly cheesy but still effective scene. As a result, they managed to defeat the monster and all sat down to enjoy their veggies.
Again, a bit of a key message, but hey, at least they found amusing ways of delivering it. And I'm just gonna hold on that looping animation for a little bit.
Thus, we reached the last episode of this arc and what we'll cover for today. Realizing that the toddler was a major factor in their war, Bell came up with the villain's next course of action.
What did I say a little earlier in this review? Enjoy the limelight while it lasts, dude, because once we reach the end of this arc, oh boy. And believe it or not, this is only the beginning.
But yeah, as one of their final gambits, the selfish agents were going to corrupt Ai into becoming a Jikochu by visiting her at night.
もしもし、警察ですか?
I don't know what depresses me more, the fact that I have more than one Stranger Danger anime clips, or the fact that I had to use 2 for this children's anime.
Anyway, using finger puppets, they lured her out for some selfish benders. Basically, they called her and gave her everything she wanted.
Oh no, they're turning her into a millennial, aren't they? Look, at the very least, don't introduce her to social media for all of our sakes.
But yeah, to be fair, it was a good plan. Take an impressionable little child who just so happened to be a key factor in their little war, and subtly convince her to join their side. Moreover, since she was required to activate Agri's transformation, they would significantly decrease the enemy's firepower. Granted, their execution could have used some work.
Keep telling yourself that, dude.
After winning her over to their side, the selfish agents challenged the Precure to face them through a letter in Ma's shoe locker that got this reaction out of Rika.
What even is salty anymore?
They revealed that Ai had indeed become a Jikochu and the cutest gangster ever. Seriously, Toy missed a golden opportunity by not selling a Jikochu variant of this doll. Through the selfish cries of Ai's, the villains were able to fight at their full strength, actually being able to hold off the Precure. However, Ai's cries also had some destructive qualities to them, putting herself in danger as they were fighting in a very unstable warehouse.
You see, Toy, this is what happens when you keep using the same filming location over and over again.
To protect her, the Precure were forced to split up, leaving it in Mana's hands to make the last save. Left alone with the selfish toddler, Mana was able to recap all of the adventures they had gone through during this previous arc, including some of the less plot-relevant episodes.
Yeah, I gotta say, a nice touch this series has going is including these little recaps that make every episode, even the ones that definitely are filler, actually feel significant.
Through Mana's words, they got Ai back on their side, and with her barriers even stronger than before, even the full power of the Blood Rings was a non-factor. However, Bell and his ambitions weren't ready to throw in the towel just yet.
It's going, and it's gone! Yes, folks, any dignity this character once had has now flown off into the great blue yonder.
Heck, not even a really bad Kensho impersonation could save this Starscream from having a more embarrassing downfall than the actual Starscream. Thus, the villains retreated, and the Precure were now stronger than ever, possibly enough to finally face King Selfishness head-on. However, the king had reawakened a trump card of his own.
Regina!
The third core of this series probably had the most filler episodes, but they were never bad filler, and often acted as components to a much larger arc. And even when they had some bog standard lessons of the day, at least they made them entertaining.
To me, the sign of a good filler episode is whether or not they at least develop their characters in meaningful ways, which for the most part, they succeeded. This of course included the new 6th Ranger of the team, Agri, who thankfully was rescued from the scrappy heap by giving her clear limitations to her powers, justifiable reasoning for her lone wolf status, and most of all, making her a relatable character. She tried to act the most mature of everyone by constantly speaking from an almost overly practical standpoint, but still had to overcome the many hurdles we all had to face as kids and learn from them. As a result, she ended up becoming a great foil to Mana, an older girl who still had some very childish tendencies and ideals, but also the drive to keep going when the chips were down. I'll discuss these two more next time, but for now, I'll say that I think Agri managed to redeem many of her bad first impressions by being more of a relatable kid character, as well as more than a little adorable. Other characters who benefited from the extra filler episodes were the Fairies. Yes, they even developed the mascot characters in entertaining and yet not spotlight-stealing ways. They actually gave them their own interests and motivations, which is a whole lot more than some other fairy friends I could name. Also, I think it helped that the creators weren't taking some of their episodes totally seriously and at least had some fun with them. While not exactly on par with some of the more recent fairy partners who don't even have fur, I would still say that these fairies were at least some of the most fun to watch. Though of course, they still managed to balance things out with some actual story that did get surprisingly dark at times. I mean seriously, it's kind of a pity that Bell got reduced down to a bit of a joke by the end of the Blood Ring arc, because he was coming off as an intimidating villain, and made for one of the more interesting villain subplots in recent years. Alas, such wasn't meant to last, but hey, at least we got some good laughs out of it. And even then, we still also got some interesting lore and world building compliments of Malin and the Crystal Mirror, as well as just some great continuity from episode to episode. I already mentioned the recaps, but the very fact that some plot points were brought up just a few episodes apart from each other linked everything together very nicely. All in all, while you could say this was technically the weakest part of the series, these episodes were still a lot of fun and gave some good insight to our main characters and even their little plushie friends. And things will start to pick up next time, especially with one of my all-time favorite episodes of the entire Precure franchise.
I'm gonna get right to work on the 4th and final part of this series, as I do feel like I need to make up for some lost time due to all the con and family-related stuff in my life. And so that I can also say goodbye to this stupid computer virus that won't leave me alone! But yeah, part 4 will be coming soon, and then after that, maybe I'll take a look at something else before I get to the movies. Look forward to all of that, and until then though, farewell for now my friends, and I wonder who's going to be the true trump card.